Hey everybody, welcome back. We're diving into lesson number 17 today. It's going to pertain to both chapter 6 of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief and also page 27 of the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus, which, if you don't remember, is this book here. And is also connected to the lesson. It's a very, very short video, so make sure that you've watched both of those before you dive in. If you've already read chapter 6 for lesson 16, then you can read it again, or you don't need to, as long as you have it fresh in your mind. And what we're doing today is a little complicated. It's simultaneously, at the same time, very simple and very complicated. And so I'm going to do my best to explain our way through it and take it step by step so we understand why we're doing what we're doing as we dive in. So here we go, as always. This is lesson 17. Again, it's chapter 6, The Lightning Thief, and also Gods and Goddesses of Olympus, page 27. And what we're going to do is compare and contrast treatment of topics and stories from different cultures. And so, two things. First, what that means is we're going to be looking at these two different books and notice a topic or an idea that they have in common, that they're both giving us information about, or telling stories about. Okay? And then we're going to compare how each book tackles that topic. The reason why we're doing this is because depending on the idea, every different author, thinker, reader can have different opinions on what that idea should be shown as. An idea that we talked about earlier was freedom. Depending on who's writing about it, they would have very, very different feelings or ideas about freedom. And then depending on the kind of writing that they're doing, you would see different ideas. If you were reading a nonfiction text about freedom, you would probably be given some information about people who stood up for their own freedom or their own rights. Whereas if there was a fiction story being told, they might be covering the idea of freedom, but in a completely different way than our history has been told. And so good readers are able to take all sorts of different kinds of texts and put the information that they get from them together to really have a better understanding of a certain topic. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at both these different texts. We're going to find that they have an idea or a topic in common, and then we'll see how each of these stories from different cultures handles that topic and what we can learn from them. Cool. And like I said, it sounds a little strange, but excuse me. Sounds a little strange, but we're going to take a step-by-step approach, and we'll be great. And then you'll be able to do it on your own. So, as always, let's start with the vocabulary. The first word is startled, which just means surprised or alarmed. Sometimes if you're really focused on something and then someone says, "Hey, what's going on?" and you didn't know they're there, you're startled. You're surprised. You weren't sure that they were there. And the second word is pitiful, means causing scorn or angry disgust. If someone is doing something that kind of makes you like feel bad for them for how sad they are, like if someone missed a basketball shot and then they sit on the sideline and are crying about it, and you're like, man, that's really not that big a deal. You probably shouldn't be crying. That's what pitiful is mostly. Just like someone's doing something that they're seeming really, really sad, but it's kind of embarrassing that they're that sad when they shouldn't be. It's a tricky thing to explain. So let's get our brains activated onto our lesson for today. And today, this is actually going to help us think of our topic that we'll find between the two texts. Today's text tells about characters who cause trouble. What can you do if you see someone causing trouble? So take a moment, pause the video, write your response. Now that you're back, I think there's lots of reasons that you could have, answers that you could have given. If you see someone causing trouble, you can tell them to stop. You can join them in the trouble, which I think is a bad idea, but you can do it. You can get somebody else to help them stop, an adult or a teacher if it's one of your friends. Lots of different responses. I'm excited to see yours. Cool. Like I said, we're going to be comparing, but to do that, we're going to explain how a topic is treated differently in the Lightning Thief and the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus. And so we're basically comparing ideas, and we're going to take that a step-by-step approach to do so. But before we do, I'm going to show you a little bit of a lesson that we did a while ago when we compared themes from different books as well. And so here's a quick lesson on it. So we're comparing the treatment of ideas and themes. In the past, we compared the themes and stories from different cultures. Here is more about comparing the ideas or a topic. And just remember that a culture is the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. Again, culture is basically whatever group of people have in common. If they have food in common, language in common, stories in common, that's their culture. A lot of times it has to do with people who live near each other or have lived near each other in the past. And so when I say the word culture, that's what I'm talking about. All right, here's our steps. The first step is we just need to notice the kinds of texts. Okay. Is a poem, we're comparing a poem to a nonfiction article, or are we comparing a novel to a short story? We got to find what kind of text they are, because based on the kind of text, we'll get different kinds of information. Okay. Now we're going to look for, and then we'll also look in for clues for culture, based on the names or the setting of where things are, and we can find out what kind of culture each of these texts come from. And then the next step is to find out what theme or what idea is shared. We can look for lessons, we can look for problems and solutions, we can look for symbols. Sometimes you can look for shared characters or problems that character is showing. And so that's kind of where we're picking up. These we should already have answers for, just based on the two texts that we've already discussed, but we'll make sure we dive into them. And then when we dive in, this is what we do. We find their similarities between their events and their characters, the problems and solutions, and also the amount of detail and the kinds of descriptions that we're given. And so our thinking questions are going to guide us through each one of these steps. And for our exit ticket, we should have a really good comparison of these two books and their treatment of a topic that we find. Excellent. So over to here. The first question doesn't directly connect to these steps, but the rest of them will very, very closely connect to each one of the steps that we see here. And then when we get into our exit ticket, we can combine a lot of our thinking questions to make our exit ticket the best that it can be. So this is actually going to just point us in the direction of finding the topic, which will actually be in question number 3. It says, how does the author show Clarice's anger on page 92 or 97 of The Lightning Thief? So 97 is electronic. So if you, right now, head back to that text, whether you have it in writing or you have it electronically, and find how does the author show Clarice's anger. All right, now that you're back, I'm going to show you what I found on that page. And so here, this is right after she tried to give Percy a swirly. Somehow Percy controlled the water and blasted her out. And she is sweating mad. She says, she gave me a look of absolute hatred. You're dead, new boy. You are totally dead. And then Percy responds with, I probably should let it go, but I said, you want to gargle with toilet water again, Clarice? Close your mouth. And then it says, her friends had to hold her back. They dragged her toward cabin 5 while the other campers made way to avoid her flailing feet. And so the author shows that she's angry by having her threaten to kill Percy, and then also needing her friends to hold her back from attacking him once again. And so that's what the author did. So the author, go away. The author shows Clarice's anger by having her threaten to kill Percy, and also needing her friends to pull her away from attacking him again. Great. And again, that doesn't directly connect to our exit ticket, but it's going to point us in the direction of our finding our shared topic. Clarice is a big anchor for that. All right, so put that in the back of your mind for now. Now let's hop to question 2. It says, how are the text types similar and different? How are the cultures related to each story different? All right, so first we're asking about the text types. All right, and so that's whether it's fiction, nonfiction, poetry, a drama. How are they similar and how are they different? And then secondly, how are the cultures related to each other? Each story different. And so it's already telling us that the cultures between the two texts are different, but how? And just to be clear, the two books we're talking about, again, are Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which we're reading, and I'll go to camera mode for a second. The Gods and Goddesses of Olympus is the book, and the particular section that we're discussing is the video that's connected to this lesson, which is page 27, about Ares, which I'll be using to help guide you. But you should have already watched the video, and you'll need to reference back to that video to find the evidence that you need. So, go ahead, pause the video, and answer this question, and then come back and I'll show you the thinking. Awesome. Now that you're back, let's start with the first. How are the text types similar and different? They're similar because both texts are describing fictional stories. Okay, the Greek gods in mythology are fictional, and the story about Percy and what he's going through is also fictional. So that is how they're similar. The texts are similar because they are both describing a fictional, made-up mythology and story. So that's how they're similar. Both of these are giving us information about a story, about something that's made up. Now, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, the text type is fictional, but it's a novel where it's giving us lots of descriptions about characters, problems, and a story told through Percy's perspective. Gods and Goddesses Olympus, on the other hand, is almost informational in that it's telling short stories about all the different gods and how they came to be and what they're like. And so they're different because one is a novel that gives us lots of descriptions about events and characters and what they're doing, and the other book gives descriptions and short stories about gods and what they're like. And so they are different. We'll say the text types are different because, and this should be underlined, we're going to say the Lightning Thief. Man, I gotta do better. Lightning Thief is a novel that gives many descriptions about characters, events, and the problems that the characters are experiencing. We could say other things about it too, but we'll say the gods and goddesses of Olympus uses short stories and brief descriptions to tell about who the Greek gods are and what they are like. Cool. And just to make that example even clearer, I'm just going to hold it up as I switch to camera mode for a second. Like, look at the description that we get for Ares. It's hardly even a paragraph, and there's not much told about him. Right? It's just like the most important details about him. Where if we look into Lightning Thief, we're on page 97 of 390. We're getting a ton of descriptions. And this is Clarice, who doesn't seem to even be that much of a major character, is getting a whole bunch of pages describing how Percy and her are interacting. And so, similar topics, different treatments. Whoops, let's go back. Now, how the culture is related to each story different, that's pretty given. We've talked about before, and at this point, I should have pointed this before. That first part of the question was bringing us through step 1, what kind of text are these? This part of the question is bringing us through step 2, so looking for culture. The Lightning Thief is taking place in modern-day America. Gods and Goddesses of Olympus are taking place in Greek mythological times, so they're different that way. We'll shorten it up so that we don't have to type, but still underline. The Lightning Thief takes place in modern day America, while the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus takes place in ancient or I won't say takes place, we'll say reflects ancient Greek culture. Cool. So we've tackled those two things. What text they are, and find the culture that each text is associated with. Lightning Thief, modern day America. The Gods and Goddesses of Olympus reflect ancient Greek culture. All right. Now, step 3 is what theme or idea is shared. This is often the trickiest part, but that's the reason why I pointed you toward Clarice in The Lightning Thief, and why we looked at page 27 in particular to discuss today's lesson. So, go ahead and see if you can find the topic or topics that are shared between the texts, and by looking back at them, and then write them down and check back in. Pause the video. Great, now that you're back. I think there's a couple things that you could have shared. The first, I think one theme that is shared between them is Ares. As we saw very clearly, page 27 of The Gods and Goddesses of Olympus is all about Ares. And when we first meet Clarice, right here, Percy Jackson, I said, meet Clarice, daughter of Ares. She's brought up, she's shown as a daughter of Ares. So, the texts share the topic of Ares. And then if we're looking back in again in camera view, I'll show you the book, we learned that Ares is the god of war. God of war. Right there. God of war. And Clarice discusses going to war or going to battle with Annabeth. So I think war. And then I think the thing that we're actually going to focus the most on is if you look here, all throughout here, it shows that Clarice is a troublemaker. She's come here to pick on Percy. She says, hey, well, a newbie? Hey, sure, Miss Princess, Big Girl said, so I can run you through that Friday night. She's threatening Annabeth, and she says, we'll pulverize you. So she's here to, like, cause trouble. She's a troublemaker. Ares, similarly, is a problem child. He is a troublemaker. I think this is, because it's so short, I can even just do this. Beep, beep, beep. It says, Ares was a god not even a mother could like. He was cruel, bad-tempered, and a coward who loved war. And so he's a bad loser. No one wanted him around. Oh, and most importantly, Ares stirred up trouble wherever he went. So I think a shared topic between the two things is troublemakers. Because Clarice and Ares are both troublemakers. And troublemakers. Troublemakers. Right. And so those are the shared topics, Ares, war, and troublemakers, between these two books. And now, so we found that, and then the next movement is to just find similarities and difference in how they're being treated. Okay? what events or descriptions show differences in the treatment of these topics. So you can think about how much is being described. You can think about what kinds of descriptions that we get. We can think of the kind of events that are shown around the ideas. And I'm going to be going on the idea of troublemakers, but if you want to go with war or Ares, that's fine too. I don't think there's really any other shared ideas that these two particular texts are sharing. So go ahead, pause the video, do your best to describe the descriptions or explain the descriptions that are different. I'm going to bring up my notes. Cool. And now that you're back, let's take a look. So first, this connects very much to the kind of text that's being used. Hold on, bring up my notes so that I can talk intelligently about this stuff. Okay. In The Lightning Thief, or let's talk about the gods and goddesses Olympus. As far as events, we don't get any events. In this whole section, there's no events about Ares. They just give a little bit of detail about him. So not many descriptions except for who he is. He was cruel, bad-tempered coward who loved war. Right? In defeat, he was a bad loser. If he was wounded, he started leaving the gods with his pitiful tears. And that he screwed up trouble. So we get a little bit of description about him, but no events. And so that's what's true of the gods and goddesses of Olympus. So let's put that down. That's another good way to compare two things, is just to say what's true about each one of them, and then let the reader decide the differences. I'm going to underline it again. Then did I make sure I go back? Oh, no, I'm not in scene 1 yet. Go back to scene 1. Go. Okay. The gods and goddesses of Olympus. Oop. Give very few details and no events about the kind of trouble that Ares would cause. In contrast, if we think about the Lightning Thief, or look at the Lightning Thief, we're getting some very clear descriptions about things that here, things that Clarice says. You got a problem with that? Who's the little runt? Things that she's saying, things that she's doing. She's she's dragging Percy into the bathroom. She's trying to stuff his head into her toilet. And then she's blasted by the water. That's all described here. And then she threatens to attack Percy again. So we're getting a ton of, a lot of descriptions about the trouble that she caused. The Lightning Thief gives many clear descriptions about the troublemaker Clarice and how please, let's be more specific. The author tells us what she says, how she reacts, and how she feels when her picking on Percy doesn't go as well as she would like. Okay, and so you can see that those are the different treatments. In the gods and goddesses of Olympus, we're not given very many details, and there's no events that show the kind of trouble that Ares would cause. But in contrast, the Lightning Thief gives many clear descriptions about Clarice, shows how she reacts, how she picks on Percy, and then the event of the attack in the bathroom, the battle in the bathroom, shows very clearly the kinds of trouble that Clarice gets into. So that's how we compared it. We compared the events and the characters and the amount of detail in the descriptions. We found differences there's not very many similarities other than the same topic of troublemaking. So that leads us to an exit ticket. We should be able to take a lot of what we've written here and kind of just combine it to fully answer this question. So explain how a topic is treated differently in The Lightning Thief and the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus. Provide details about the type and culture of each text, and include details from each text to support your ideas about the treatment of the topic. Okay, so take your time. It's basically given 3 different steps and directions. Use your thinking questions to help you out. And when you check back in, I'll show you how you can combine all of your previous thoughts to have a good, strong exit ticket answer. Awesome. So, here we go. Whew, this is a little bit of a doozy because we want to make sure that we explain a lot of different things. And so I'm actually going to bring up my notes. And let's start from the very beginning. We says explain how a topic is treated differently from these 2 books. So we first need to state what the topic is. All right, and we talked about the topic of troublemakers. And so we're going to say both, it's got to be capitalized and underlined. The Lightning Thief and the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus discuss the topic of troublemakers. All right, so we said the topic, and now we have to describe what kind of books they are and which topic they are discussing. So we'll say in the Greek myth from the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus, Ares is described as a troublemaker. And then straight from the text, I'm going to just grab the text that's closest to that. Ares stirred up trouble wherever he went. The text says Ares stirred up trouble wherever he went. Then we go on, we can explain what the types of details that it gave from it is that the text doesn't give many details or events about how Ares was a troublemaker. And the text itself is very short. So it's describing not only what it tells about us, but that it's a very short without a lot of details. Okay. Now, to, again, compare them, we can actually just say what's true about the Lightning Thief. And so we're going to say the culture that it came from, which is modern-day America, modern-day American novel, it's not a Greek myth, novel, The Lightning Thief, uses or shows the character Clarice as a troublemaker. To add a detail of fact, Percy says he has to fight her to, this is something that I marked in the text here, right? So he had to earn my own rep. I was the new to earn my own rep, showing that show you that. To earn my own rep. Earn my own rep. And then that, because that is the detail from it, shows what kind of troublemaker it is. Even more than a troublemaker, Clarice seems to want to kill Percy. She says, yikes. Then back here, at the very end of the chapter, you are dead, new boy. You are totally dead. You are dead, new boy. You are totally dead. And then we can explain that this shows that the text gives many details about how Clarice acts and the kinds of things that she says and does to cause trouble throughout the novel. All right, let's make sure that we've done what we've been asked to do. Explain how a topic is treated differently in The Lightning Thief and the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus. So we named the topic, which is troublemaker. Okay, we stated how it was described in the first text, the Gods and Goddesses, and we also described how it was stated in The Lightning Thief. Did we give details about the type and culture of each text? We said Gods and Goddesses was the Greek myth, and the culture, Greek, yes. Excuse me. And then we said a modern-day American, which is the culture of The Lightning Thief, and it's a novel, which is the type of text. We did that. And then we included details from each text to support your ideas about the treatment topic. This is a detail from the text that shows that there weren't many details about Ares and the troublemaker itself from the short text. And then down here we gave 2 details about how Percy had to fight Clarice to earn his own rep, and how she wanted to kill him by saying, "You are dead, new boy." These shows that there's lots of details in this Lightning Thief as opposed to the Gods and Goddesses of Olympus. So we did it all. Whew. So I know that was a lot, and it might seem kind of tricky, but when you start to practice that, the skill of comparing multiple texts and seeing how they treat similar topics, you can then learn more about the topic itself from how the different treatments and the information that you get from each one. We've been on chapter 6 for 2 lessons now. The next one we're moving on to chapters 7 and 8, and continuing to see how Percy happens to deal with the new information about him being a half-blood. So I'm excited to deal into those lessons with you. Enjoy.